"You were a mistake," the Wolf King said, and she vanished with his twins in her womb. In the heart of this land stood a castle, ancient and proud, its stone walls covered in ivy. The Wolf King ruled from within these walls, a man both feared and admired, his power as much a curse as a blessing. Dante, the Wolf King, paced the great hall of his castle, his long cloak sweeping behind him. His mind was heavy with thoughts he couldn't shake, thoughts of her, the woman who had crossed his path and changed everything. Her name was Seraphine. She was a mystery, one he had never expected to encounter. She wasn't from any noble bloodline, nor did she carry the weight of royal responsibilities. She was wild, like the forest that surrounded them. Unpredictable, free, and yet, she had captivated him in a way he could not explain. Their first meeting had been in the forest, an accidental encounter. She had been alone, standing by the edge of a dark river, her hair like a veil of night, her eyes reflecting the full moon. There was something haunting in the way she moved, something that made him both want to claim her and keep his distance. For weeks, they had exchanged nothing but stolen glances. Yet one fateful night, when the moon was full, their destinies collided. The passion between them had been undeniable, two souls drawn together by forces beyond their control. But what he hadn't known then was that Seraphine wasn't just another woman. She was the key to breaking the curse that had plagued his family for generations. The curse was ancient. It had been placed upon his ancestors for defying the gods. The price had been steep, a bloodline forever doomed to suffer unless the curse could be broken by the birth of a child from forbidden love, a child who would either destroy or redeem the kingdom. And Seraphine, unwittingly, had become the mother of that child. Dante's chest tightened as he thought of that night. They had shared something real, something powerful. But then, he had done something unforgivable, something he regretted every waking moment. "You were a mistake," he had said to her, his voice cold and hard. "A mere distraction." Those words had crushed her, and now she was gone. The next morning, Seraphine vanished, leaving behind only silence. No trace, no word, just a gaping emptiness where once there had been the promise of something more. He had tried to find her, of course, sending his men into the forest, scouring every inch of land. But it was as if she had disappeared into thin air. The castle felt colder now. The weight of the curse pressed on him, heavier than before. His power, once so strong, was waning. The winds carried whispers of doom, and strange occurrences began to plague the kingdom. Crops failed, animals grew sick, the people murmured of dark forces stirring. And all the while, the one person who could help him was out there, somewhere. Seraphine. He had pushed her away, believing that his kingdom and his pride were more important than the fleeting desire he had felt for her. Now, he saw that he had made a grave mistake. His heart was torn between anger and longing. He hated himself for how he had treated her, yet there was something inside him that refused to admit his guilt. The curse demanded more than just a child. It demanded sacrifice. Dante's gaze turned to the moon, now rising high in the sky. It was a full moon again, just like that night. He could feel it calling to him, urging him to take action, to face the truth of what he had done. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke his thoughts. A servant entered, bowing low. "My king, there is word from the scouts," the servant said, his voice trembling. "There's a sighting by the river near the edge of the forest. A woman dressed in dark clothes. She matches the description of Seraphine." Dante's heart skipped a beat. "Is it her?" The servant nodded. "It seems so, sire." Without another word, Dante turned and stormed out of the room. His boots echoed on the stone floors as he made his way toward the stables. He didn't care for the cold wind biting at his skin or the whispers of his guards as he passed. All that mattered was reaching her. He had to find her. The journey through the forest was long and treacherous. The moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy above, and the trees seemed to close in around him like silent watchers. But Dante didn't stop. He couldn't stop. As he approached the riverbank, the figure came into view. She stood there staring at the flowing water, her back turned to him. Her long dark hair swayed in the wind, and the moonlight made her seem like a ghost, a specter of his past. "Seraphine," he called, his voice hoarse. She turned slowly, and for a moment Dante felt the breath leave his body. There she was, as beautiful and haunting as he remembered, but something was different. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, were now cold and distant. There was no hint of the tenderness he had once seen. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I told you it was over." Dante's heart clenched. "I was wrong, I shouldn't have." "You don't have the right to apologize," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You made your choice, and now I have made mine." She turned her gaze back to the river as if dismissing him entirely. But Dante couldn't let her go. He stepped forward, his voice desperate. "You don't understand. The curse, it's getting worse. My kingdom is falling apart, and He stopped, realizing how weak he sounded. "I need you, Seraphine," she laughed bitterly, a sound that chilled him. "You need me. Is that what you think? You never cared for me. You never cared for anything except your throne." "No," Dante said, his voice breaking. "I didn't understand then, but I do now. You were never just a mistake. You were everything." Seraphine remained silent for a moment, her gaze never leaving the water. "You're too late," she said finally. "I'm carrying your children, and they are the ones who will decide your fate, not you, not me." Dante's breath caught in his throat. Children. His heart raced at the thought. The prophecy, the curse, it all made sense now. Their children were the key, the children who could either save or destroy the kingdom. He stepped closer, his hands trembling as he reached out to her. "Seraphine, please, don't leave me. We can fix this. We can break the curse together." She looked at him then, her eyes dark with sorrow and anger. "You don't get to choose anymore. This is no longer about us. This is about something far greater than either of us." With that, she turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Dante standing by the river, alone. The wind howled, and the sound of rushing water seemed to echo in his mind. His heart was heavy with regret, but he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. And the price for his mistake would be far greater than he ever imagined. The days after Seraphine's disappearance felt like a lifetime. The castle, once filled with the sounds of bustling servants and courtiers, was now eerily silent. The walls, which had once felt like a fortress, now seemed to press in on Dante with each passing hour. The weight of his own actions crushed him. He had pushed her away, and now she was gone. Everywhere he turned, there were reminders of his mistake. The flowers in the royal garden that he had once walked past without a second thought seemed to mock him now. The golden crown he wore felt heavier on his head, as if it had become a symbol of everything he had lost. But what he had lost was not just her. It was something deeper, something that had been taken from him by his own pride and foolishness. The curse that had hung over his bloodline for generations had only worsened since Seraphine left. The kingdom was suffering. Crops that should have been in bloom were wilting before their time, and strange storms ravaged the coast. The villagers spoke of shadows moving in the forest, of unnatural creatures prowling the edges of their homes. The signs were clear. The curse was consuming everything. Yet despite the destruction that loomed over him, Dante could not bring himself to act. Every decision he made was clouded by regret and fear. He had always believed his strength lay in control, control over his kingdom, over his people, over everything. But now he realized his greatest weakness was his inability to let go of his pride. And in trying to control everything, he had lost the one person who might have saved him. He could no longer ignore it. The time for running away was over. He had to find her, find Seraphine. With that thought, Dante gathered his most trusted men. They would venture into the wilds, into the depths of the forest, and search for the woman who had once been everything to him. The journey would be dangerous. The forest was cursed, and many who ventured too deep never returned. But Dante had no choice. His kingdom was falling apart, and he knew that only Seraphine held the key to saving them all. The journey was long and treacherous. The forest was a dark labyrinth, its trees twisted and ancient, their branches reaching out like fingers to trap those who dared to enter. Dante had heard the stories of the forest's enchantments, of how it could warp time and space, making it impossible to find your way out. But he pressed on, determined to find her to make things right. Days turned into weeks, and yet there was no sign of Seraphine. His men grew restless, their patience wearing thin. The whispers of the forest grew louder, as if mocking their efforts. At night they could hear strange howls and rustling in the trees, but each time they tried to investigate, there was nothing there. It was as if the forest itself was alive, a living, breathing thing that resented their presence. One evening, as they set up camp by the edge of a river, Dante stood by the water, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The sun had set, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. He could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him, the regret and guilt gnawing at his soul. "Your Majesty," a voice called out from behind him. It was his captain, a seasoned warrior named Rook. "We've searched every corner of this cursed forest. There's no sign of her." Dante turned to face him. "I don't care if we have to search every inch of this land. We will not return until we find her." Rook hesitated. "But sire, the kingdom needs you. We cannot abandon our duties. Our people are suffering. The curse is spreading. We cannot allow the darkness to consume us." Dante's jaw clenched. He knew what Rook was saying was true, but his heart was torn in two. His kingdom was on the brink of collapse, yet all he could think about was Seraphine. He had broken her trust, and he couldn't live with himself until he had tried to make amends. "Tell the men to rest," Dante said, his voice weary. "I'll go on alone." Rook's eyes widened. "Sire, you cannot." "I will go," Dante insisted, his voice hard. "I owe it to her, and I owe it to myself." That night, as the others slept, Dante ventured deeper into the forest. The moonlight barely filtered through the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows on the path ahead. The forest was silent, save for the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. As he walked, his mind raced. What had he done? How could he fix the mess he had made? Seraphine had given him everything, her love, her trust, and he had thrown it all away. He had been a fool. The curse that haunted him, the curse that had haunted his ancestors, was a burden he couldn't escape. But now, with Seraphine gone, the curse was spiraling out of control. He could feel its grip tightening around his heart. And yet, despite all the darkness, there was something else, something he could not deny. A longing, a desire to see her again, to hold her, to apologize, to beg for her forgiveness. It was as if a part of him had been hollowed out when she left, and no matter how many times he tried to fill it with duty or power, nothing would work. Only she could fill that void. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. Through the dense trees, he saw a figure standing in the distance. A woman. Her silhouette was barely visible in the moonlight, but there was no mistaking who it was. "Seraphine," he called, his voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. She turned, and for a moment their eyes met. There was no warmth in her gaze, only coldness. The woman who had once loved him now looked at him as if he were a stranger, and perhaps to her he was. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "Haven't you caused enough pain already?" Dante stepped forward, his heart aching at the sight of her. "I never meant to hurt you, Seraphine. I was wrong. I was a fool. She raised a hand, silencing him. "Save your apologies, Dante. Words mean nothing now. You chose your kingdom over me. You chose your pride over the truth." Dante winced, her words cutting him deeper than any sword. She was right. He had made his choice, and it had cost him everything. "I know," he whispered, "but please let me make it right. We can break the curse together. You and me, our children, they're the key." For a long moment, Seraphine didn't speak. She simply stared at him, her eyes cold, yet filled with something else, something he couldn't quite place. It was almost as if she were weighing him, measuring the sincerity in his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "You don't understand, Dante. The curse is not just your burden. It's ours now. And the children, they are not just a gift. They are a weapon." Dante's heart skipped a beat. "A weapon," she nodded. "A weapon that could either save or destroy everything." The forest had always been a place of mystery, a realm where shadows danced between the trees and the wind carried ancient secrets. But tonight, it felt different. There was a stillness in the air, as though the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Dante stood at the edge of the clearing, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched Seraphine carefully. She had not moved since they first met in the forest's heart. The coldness in her eyes remained, but there was something else too, something he couldn't quite understand. Was it regret, or was it the weight of the power she carried within her? "I came to make things right," Dante said, his voice quieter now, as if he feared the trees might be listening. "I've wronged you, and I can never undo the past, but I can try to make up for it. We can break the curse, Seraphine, together." Seraphine's gaze flickered for a brief moment, but she quickly masked it with a stern expression. "It's not that simple, Dante. The curse is not just some spell to be broken with words. It's tied to us, to the children I carry." She placed a hand on her stomach, her eyes softening for just an instant before returning to their coldness. "You think this is about forgiveness, but it's more than that." Dante's heart skipped a beat. Children. He had known, of course, but hearing her say it out loud brought everything into sharper focus. They were more than a symbol of his past mistake. They were the future. They were the key to his kingdom's survival, to everything he had once taken for granted. "Tell me what I need to do," he said, taking a cautious step toward her. "I'll do anything. You and I, our children, we are tied to this curse. I know we can end it if we work together." Seraphine shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. You think this is about redemption, but it's not. The curse was never just about us. It's about the balance between light and dark, power and sacrifice. The children I carry are not just heirs to your throne, they are born of a prophecy. They will either save or destroy everything." Dante frowned, trying to comprehend her words. "Then why haven't you told me this before? Why hide them away?" "I had no choice," she replied sharply. "The prophecy is clear. The children must grow in isolation, away from the influence of your kingdom, away from the darkness that will consume them if they are raised in the wrong place. If you had come to me earlier, we would have been forced to make a decision before the time was right." Dante's eyes burned with a mixture of frustration and longing. "You think I would have tried to control them, use them as pawns for my kingdom?" Seraphine's expression softened slightly, but the hardness in her eyes remained. "I know what you're capable of, Dante. I know what you would do to protect your kingdom. I'm not blaming you, but you have to understand that the children are not just yours. They are part of something far greater than you or me." The wind rustled through the trees, a reminder that the world around them was shifting, changing, and the balance was fragile. Dante stepped closer, his voice low and full of urgency. "If they're the key to ending the curse, then let me help. I'll do whatever it takes. But we need to act now. The kingdom is falling apart. The storm is coming, and I don't know how much longer we have." Seraphine looked at him, her eyes searching his face as though she were trying to read his very soul. There was a pause, a heavy silence that seemed to stretch between them until she finally spoke again. "You're right," she said, her voice soft but determined. "We don't have much time, but you need to understand something, Dante. The curse doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone. And the children I carry, they hold the power to either restore balance or tip it into chaos." Dante nodded, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of the prophecy pressing down on him. These children, their children, were no ordinary heirs. They were the embodiment of the curse, the hope of redemption, and the potential destruction of everything he had worked for. If they grew up under the wrong influence, they could bring about the end of the kingdom. "But why can't we raise them together?" Dante asked, his voice filled with desperation. Why can't we be a family? Why can't we face this together? Seraphine's gaze turned distant, as if she were seeing something far beyond the forest. Because the prophecy is not just about us. It's about the balance of power. If we raise them together, it could tilt the scales in the wrong direction. The curse is stronger than either of us, and if we act recklessly, it could consume everything. Dante clenched his fists, feeling helpless. So what are we supposed to do? Just let them grow up in isolation, away from their father, away from me. Seraphine looked at him, her expression softening for the briefest moment. I never wanted this for them, Dante. I never wanted them to grow up in a world filled with so much darkness. But they are part of the prophecy. Their power will either restore what's been broken, or it will destroy it completely. We have no choice but to wait. A cold shiver ran down Dante's spine as the gravity of the situation hit him. Time was running out, and the future of the kingdom, his kingdom, rested in the hands of two children who had yet to be born. As if on cue, the wind shifted, and a strange noise echoed through the trees, a low, distant growl that sent a ripple of unease through the air. Both Dante and Seraphine turned toward the sound, their eyes narrowing. "Do you hear that?" Dante asked, his voice tense. Seraphine nodded, her face pale. "We're not alone." Before either of them could react, a figure emerged from the shadows of the forest, a tall, hooded man, his presence radiating an eerie, unnatural energy. His eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the dark, and his steps were soundless, as if the earth itself was reluctant to bear his weight. Dante's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" The man's lips curled into a smile, revealing sharp teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. "I am the one who has been waiting for you, Wolf King," he said, his voice smooth and cold. "And you, Seraphine, have something that belongs to me." Seraphine stepped in front of Dante, her eyes hardening. "Stay away from them. These children are not yours to claim." The man's smile widened, his eyes gleaming with a cold hunger. "Oh, but they are. You see, the prophecy is only one part of the story. There's another, darker truth that you've both ignored. The children hold the power to change the very nature of the curse, to destroy it or to wield it, and I intend to make sure that they are used to their full potential." Dante stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "Not while I breathe, you won't." The man's laugh echoed through the trees, a sound that sent a chill down Dante's spine. "You have no idea what you're up against, Wolf King. You've underestimated everything, including the power of your own bloodline." Seraphine's face was pale, and her hand instinctively went to her stomach, as if protecting the twins within her. "You don't understand. They will not be used by anyone. Not by you, not by anyone." The man's eyes flickered toward her stomach, and a twisted grin spread across his face. "We'll see about that." The forest had grown unnaturally quiet as the mysterious figure stood before Dante and Seraphine. The wind no longer whispered through the trees, and the distant sounds of the animals seemed to hold their breath. The figure, tall and dark, radiated an unsettling presence. His eyes glowed like embers in the dark, his smile cruel and knowing. It was as if the very earth feared him. Dante's heart beat wildly in his chest as he stood before this stranger, trying to understand what he was up against. This man, this shadow, seemed to know things that Dante couldn't even begin to grasp. The curse, the prophecy, the children. "I don't know who you are," Dante said, his voice strained but filled with authority, "but I swear, if you think you can take them, you'll regret it." The man's eyes glinted with a cold amusement, his lips curling into a smile. "You still don't understand, do you? You and Seraphine both think you can control the fate of these children, but their power is far beyond your reach." Seraphine stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for her stomach, where the twins grew. There was a fire in her eyes, one that Dante hadn't seen before. The protective mother was no longer hiding behind her walls. "They are not your puppets," she said fiercely, her voice steady despite the fear that lingered in her heart. "You won't control them." The man's smile grew wider. We will see about that, won't we? Dante stepped in front of Seraphine, placing himself between her and the stranger. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a burning desire to shield her, to protect their children. "Leave now," he warned, his voice low and menacing. "You have no claim here." But the man didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head, studying them both. "The children you carry are the key to everything," he said slowly, as if savoring each word. "They are born of prophecy, born of darkness and light. You cannot escape what they are. The curse you so desperately wish to break will not be undone without sacrifice." Seraphine's face paled at his words. "Sacrifice," she whispered, a chill running through her veins. "What kind of sacrifice?" The man's smile faded and his voice grew colder. "A sacrifice that will require more than just the two of you. The curse can only be undone when the balance is restored. But to restore it, someone must lose everything." Dante's eyes narrowed. "No, I won't allow it. I will protect my kingdom, my family. I won't let you use them." The man's eyes flickered with a strange, almost sad pity. "You misunderstand. This was never about me or you, Dante. This is about what the children represent, a force beyond your control. If you try to keep them from their fate, you will only bring destruction." Seraphine's breath caught in her throat. "Are you saying that they will destroy us, destroy everything?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward, his presence growing more oppressive with each movement. The shadows seemed to coil around him, responding to his very being. "I am merely the messenger," he said, his voice echoing with a sense of inevitability. "The prophecy has already set its course. The children will choose their own path, but their power will be tested. You both will be tested. And in the end, you must choose. Will you fight against the inevitable, or will you trust the children to choose their own destiny?" Dante's heart pounded in his chest. He had always thought he understood his role, his duty as a king, as a protector of his people. But this was beyond anything he had prepared for. His mind raced, but every thought was clouded with the fear of what the man was saying. His children, born of love but also of darkness, were not only the key to breaking the curse. They could also be the weapon that destroyed everything he had built. "I don't care about the prophecy," Dante growled, his fists clenched. "I will not let them become pawns in a game I don't understand." The stranger's eyes flared, and for a moment it seemed like the very ground beneath them trembled. "You have no choice," he said, his voice full of finality. "The children are already part of the curse. And you, Dante, you are the one who will lead them to their fate, whether you want to or not." Seraphine stepped forward, standing beside Dante. She took his hand in hers, the warmth of her touch grounding him. Her eyes were filled with determination, but there was also an unmistakable sadness. "We can't let them control us," she said quietly. "We will raise them to choose their own path, not as pawns, but as our children." The man's gaze flickered between them, and for a moment Dante saw something almost like respect in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold certainty. "Very well, but understand this. The choice will not be yours alone. The curse is older than both of you, and it will take what is owed." With that, the figure turned and began to disappear into the shadows, but not before one last warning, spoken in a voice that sent a chill down Dante's spine. "The children will awaken soon, and when they do, the world will change. The question is, will you be ready?" As the man disappeared into the forest, the air grew still once again, the silence almost deafening. Dante stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. His life, his kingdom, and his family were all entwined in something much larger than he had ever imagined. Seraphine squeezed his hand, bringing him back to the present. "We will face this together," she said softly. "No matter what happens, we are not alone." Dante looked into her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of redemption. He didn't know how they would overcome the darkness, or what sacrifices would be required of them. But he knew one thing for sure: he would not let their children become weapons. He would fight to protect them, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. As the night settled around them, a strange sense of calm washed over him. He was no longer the king alone. He was a father, a protector. And whatever came next, he would face it with Seraphine by his side. The curse was not just a force of destruction. It was a challenge. And it was a challenge he would meet head-on, even if it meant confronting the deepest parts of his soul.